Ray's astrophotography hard drives hold the truth. NASA tried to delete 3. IATLAS didn't disintegrate, it hatched. The official report says cometary fragmentation, but Ray's spectral analysis reveals a geometric, metallic signature underneath the dust. That wasn't a rock dying, man. It was a machine waking up.
So it's good to be back taking pictures. It's been very cloudy, and seeing the blue skies excites me. So we can capture more and more pictures of Comet 3A Atlas. So I was taking a look at the recent Hubble pictures. They were released like a couple of days ago. And what intrigues me was the way the pictures look. I was looking at close-up of Hubble. I noticed 2 things. Like, one is the Comet 3A Atlas looks like a dot, and there is a big blue coma around it. And then, of course, they have those hexagonal kind of things. Internet is going crazy over it, but it could very well be an artifact from the way the lenses on the Hubble are. So that was not the part of the mystery. The mystery was, how did you get a point light from the 3A Atlas that I was never able to capture? And even Hubble, when it took the pictures before, that's not how the pictures were. It has a big blob of light and it has a tail, that the previous picture. And this one was like a tiny dot of light and the big coma. So that made me curious to go into the Hubble website and download the data, the raw pictures that Hubble took actually. And I spent time to process those pictures. The moment I actually downloaded and I saw the picture, those pictures look very different than the picture that was published. So I kept processing the picture to see if I can get any closer to where the published picture is going to look. I wasn't successful getting to that point.
Man, think about that word for a second. Hatching. It implies intent. It implies life. We're typically told these things are just dirty snowballs, right? Just cosmic leftovers drifting through the void, completely subject to the laws of physics, getting pushed around by the solar wind like a plastic bag in a parking lot. But then Ray comes in with this spectral analysis that just completely flips the script. He's looking at the light signatures, and he's not seeing a crumbling rock. He's seeing geometry. He's seeing a metallic signature. And if you follow that thread, if you let yourself go down that rabbit hole just for a minute, the timeline of this thing starts to look less like a disintegration and more like a startup sequence. Because look at the behavior. You go back to September 2025, this thing didn't just break apart, it powered up. It got 6 times brighter in 48 hours. Boom. Just like that. And it turned this vivid electric green. Now, the official narrative, and you gotta love the official narrative, it's always so neat and tidy. They say, oh, that's just the outer shell fracturing, exposing deep carbon-rich ice. Okay, sure. That's a valid scientific theory. But then you have to explain why, at the exact same time, it developed a tail-oriented times directly towards the sun asterisk. That is wild, man. That is like driving into oncoming traffic on the freeway. Comets don't do that. The solar wind is supposed to push everything away, but this thing pushed back. It's behaving like it has propulsion. It's behaving like it has a will, and it just keeps getting weirder. We're in December now, right? December 2025. This object is traversing from Virgo into Leo, sitting about 286 million kilometers out. It's faint, magnitude 12. So you need the heavy glass to see it. But look at what Hubble picked up on December 6th. They released these images, and suddenly we're seeing a teardrop-shaped inner coma, a teardrop pointing at the Sunday, and an anti-tail That's the term they use when the physics don't line up with the visual data. Anti-tail. It sounds like something from a sci-fi novel, but it's real. It suggests that whatever is coming off this object isn't just passive dust. It's being ejected with force, maybe even directed force. Even a few days before that, on December 2nd, the images showed this symmetric glow. Smooth gradients, a sharp central point. It lacked that chaotic, wind-swept look you expect from a dying comet. It looked stable. It looked engineered. You see these faint, finger-shaped jets suggesting sublimation from a rotating surface? That's the scientific way of saying it's spinning and venting gas. But if you're Ray and you're looking at those metallic signatures, you're not thinking sublimation. You're thinking exhaust. You're thinking stabilizers. And don't forget the juice probe. That was back in November. It captures this partial image showing a bright halo and a double-tail plasma going one way, dust going the other. It's like this thing is shedding layers, revealing different structures as it gets closer. Scientists are arguing over ice volcanoes versus debris shedding, but they're arguing over the symptoms, not the cause. They're looking at the smoke and ignoring the fire. So now we arrive at this critical moment with the imagery. This is where the rubber meets the road, and honestly, where the tinfoil hat starts to feel a little tight, but you got to wear it, because we have this independent astrophotographer, a guy who isn't on the NASA payroll, a guy who is just obsessed with the raw data, and he's noticing that the pictures don't add up. He's seeing a disconnect between the big blob of light that was there before and this sudden, pristine, tiny dot that NASA's putting out. It's too clean. It's too perfect. It makes you wonder about the processing. When you take a photo of deep space, it's not like taking a selfie on your iPhone. It's raw data. It's noise. You have to interpret that data to create an image, and interpretation leaves room for manipulation. If the raw data shows a complex, potentially artificial structure, something huge and glowing, and the published image shows a neat little point of light that fits the comet narrative, what happened in between? What filter did they run? Did they scrub the anomaly? Did they fix the glitch, even if the glitch was the alien spaceship? This guy, this independent shooter, he tried to replicate their look from the raw files and couldn't do it. That's the smoking gun right there. If the math doesn't work, something is being hidden. He's digging into the optical physics of it, looking at how light spreads through the lens, and he's realizing that to get that dot, you have to force it. You have to apply a model that assumes it's a dot to begin with. It's circular logic. And he's about to break down exactly how they might have done it using a concept that sounds super technical, but is actually the key to the whole deception.
I believe the interpretation of those pictures to me looks like there is a scientific term called PSF. It's called point spread function. So you know where the light is and how it is spread. I believe they must have applied some model to figure out maybe the dot of the light where it is coming from, and did not show like this big blob that we are seeing whenever we see the 3A atlas. That's the difference that I saw when I immediately looked at the picture. I'm going to share that picture with you, and I'll show you the differences between those two pictures. So when I was looking at the pictures that I was taking, I'm getting more and more clear that 3A atlas is more like a cone shape in the front, and it's a elongated object in the back, and there are these spherical or a tornado kind of jets that are spinning in the back. That's how I'm seeing now 3A atlas. No matter how many times I take a picture, I think that's the structure it is revealing itself. But this point light, I did not understand. So I went ahead and started processing those. I'm going to share those pictures with you. So please do subscribe to my channel. I take pictures of comets, asteroids, various astronomy videos. So when I post these new videos, you will get a notification. Let me show you the data that I captured and I processed the Hubble picture. So this is the picture NASA released. They took a picture a couple of days ago on December 4th, and it shows that point of light. So I was intrigued with this point of light, and I went ahead and downloaded that image. This is just a JPEG file. And I tried to zoom into this file. This is the file that NASA released. And I zoomed into this file. This is showing that core with a point of light. And also it shows that hexagon kind of look. I think that requires a separate video. Internet is going crazy over that particular structure. But anyway, coming back to this part, so I'm more interested in this one single point of light. How did NASA got, or Hubble got that picture?
You got to sit with that for a second, man. Just let it marinate. Because if Ray is right, and look, I'm not saying he is, I'm just a guy with a microphone asking questions, but if he's right, we are looking at the single greatest fumble in human history, or the greatest lie. We're talking about an Object 3, I-Atlas, that everybody and their grandmother was ready to write off as a dead rock. Oh, it disintegrated. It's toast. That's what they told us. But then you look at the data coming in from early December, specifically around December 2nd and December 6th, and the story doesn't match the picture. It's like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, but the square peg is a spaceship and the round hole is our understanding of astrophysics. Ray keeps talking about these geometric signatures, right? Metallic, hydrogen, weird spectral lines. And then you look at the behavior. December 2nd, the coma expands. But it's not messy. It's not like a snowball getting hit with a shotgun, which is what a disintegrating comet should look like. It's symmetric. It's got this smooth, glowing gradient with a super sharp central point. Nature is chaotic, man. Nature is messy. Explosions are messy. This looked controlled. It lacked that solar wind shaping that you expect. Usually the sun acts like a leaf blower. It pushes the dust back. But this thing had an even coloration, like it was glowing from the inside out. And then December 6th, this is the one that really gets me. Hubble takes a look, and what does it see? A teardrop-shaped inner coma extending towards the Sunday. Towards it! That's the anti-tail we keep talking about. How do you explain that with rocks and ice? If I throw a handful of flour out of a moving car, the flour goes behind the car. It doesn't fly forward into the wind unless it's got an engine behind it, unless it's being pushed. Ray looks at that and he sees propulsion. He sees a wake. And those finger-shaped jets they mentioned? Faint sublimating jets? Or are those exhaust ports? Are those stabilizers firing to keep the orientation locked as it moves from Virgo into Leo? Because that's where it is right now. It's out there about 286 million kilometers away, roughly magnitude 12. You need a serious telescope to see it, but it's there. And it's not fading into the background noise like a dying ember. It's doing things that imply structure. Even the JUICE probe, and shout out to the European Space Agency for actually captured that image showing a double tail, a plasma tail going one way, a dust tail going the other. It's shedding, sure, but is it shedding debris or is it shedding heat? Is it venting? This brings us back to that wild moment in September. Remember? It got 6 times brighter in 48 hours. Turned that vivid electric green. The official line is fracturing of the outer shell exposing carbon-rich ice. Okay, plausible. Science is cool. But Ray? He called it a startup sequence. Like flipping the breaker on a nuclear reactor. The shell cracks, the core comes online, the color shifts, and suddenly you have directional control. You have a tail pointing at the star you're using for a gravity assist. That's not physics as we know it for a dumb rock. That's navigation. So you have all this smoke, right? Where's the fire? The fire is in the discrepancy. This is where the tinfoil hat starts to feel a little tight, but you got to wear it. You have NASA releasing these processed images where 3I Atlas looks like a cute little smudge, a point of light. Nothing to see here. Move along. They use these models, these point spread functions, PSF, to clean up the image. It's supposed to correct for the blur of the telescope optics. Fair enough. But if you tune that algorithm too aggressively, you know what happens? You erase the anomalies. You force the data to look like what you expect it to look like. You turn a craft into a comet. You turn a structure into a dot. And this is where our independent guy comes in. This astrophotographer isn't on the payroll. He doesn't have a grant to protect. He's just curious. He's looking at these official releases, and his gut is screaming that something is wrong. The geometry doesn't align with his own observations or the raw spectral data. He suspects they are scrubbing the image, literally digital airbrushing on a cosmic scale. So what does he do? He doesn't take their word for it. He goes to the source. He logs into the Hubble Legacy Archive, which is public, by the way. Anyone can do this if you know what you're looking for. And he pulls the raw files, the unpolished, unscrubbed, dirty data straight from the sensor. And that's the moment. That's the Neo taking the red pill moment. Because when you strip away the NASA correction filters, when you look at what the telescope actually saw before the scientists told it what should times have seen, the picture changes. It stops being a dot. It starts looking like something else entirely. He's sitting there at his computer, downloading these massive files, probably shaking his head because the exposure times are all wrong. They overexposed it, maybe to wash out the details. Who knows? But even with that, he sees it. He sees the shape. He sees the lie. And he's about to walk us through exactly what he found when he peeled back that layer of censorship. Listen to this.
So I went ahead and into the website. From Hubble website, I downloaded the pictures, and you're seeing the 4 pictures that were downloaded that were taken on the December 4th. And these were actually 270 seconds exposure. I would have preferred if they had taken like 40 seconds or 25 seconds. The image is so bright, we would have seen more structure if they had taken smaller exposure. But anyway, it's almost like 4.5 minutes, 4 minutes and 30 seconds. So these are way too bright pictures. I downloaded them. So these are the ones that I downloaded from the website. So they are pretty much like black and white pictures. The coloring we have to do. And you see that picture, right? It's not a point of light. Whereas the pictures that we are seeing on the released website is like a point of light. I'm just putting that side by side. So Hubble took the pictures that we normally get, which is a little bit bigger cone in the front. Whereas this one, I'll zoom in for you. It becomes like slightly smaller, right? It just becomes like a small point of light. It is missing all that stuff in the back, and also this point, and all these streaks of jets or whatever is coming out from that. It just becomes almost like that point of light and the coma. That's it.
You have to step back and look at what this thing is actually doing, because physics, standard textbook physics, is screaming that this isn't just a rock. It's entirely possible we are witnessing the single most significant event in human history, and we're treating it like a weather balloon. Think about the mechanics of a comet. It's a dirty snowball, right? It gets close to the sun, the ice melts, gas shoots out, times away, times from the heat source because of solar wind. That's Comet's 101. But then you look at 3I Atlas, specifically the data coming in from early December 2025, and the script just gets thrown into the wood chipper. On December 6th, Hubble takes a look. Now, keep in mind, this is the premier eye in the sky, the gold standard. What does it see? It sees a teardrop-shaped inner coma extending times the Sunday towards it. And this anti-tail phenomenon, that's not drift. In any other context, if you see an object in a vacuum pushing matter against the solar wind, you don't call it a tail. You call it thrust. You call it a vector. Ray has been banging this drum saying this isn't disintegration, it's a startup sequence. And when you look at the images from December 2nd, the fragmentation story falls apart. You had this expanding, perfectly symmetric glow, smooth gradients, a sharp central point. When things explode in space, they're messy. They're chaotic. This looked regulated. It lacked that solar wind shaping you expect from a passive object. It had these faint, finger-shaped jets suggesting sublimation from a rotating surface, but the coloration was totally even. It's too clean, man. It's too deliberate. And this isn't new. Go back to November 2nd. The JUICE probe, which is out there doing God's work, caught a partial image showing a bright halo and a double tail. You had a plasma tail going one way and a dust tail another. Scientists are scratching their heads talking about ice volcanoes or shedding debris, trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. But remember late September? That's the smoking gun. The thing gets 6 times brighter in 48 hours, turns electric green, and points a tail at the Sunday. That was the moment Ray thinks the machine woke up. That green glow wasn't just gas. It was theorized to be the outer shell fracturing to expose a carbon-rich core. Or maybe, just maybe, it was the lights turning on. So here we are, December 5th. The object is roughly 286 million kilometers away, moving from Virgo into Leo, sitting at a magnitude of 12. It's faint, it's receding, and the mainstream narrative is nothing to see here, folks, just a dying rock. But then you have this independent astrophotographer, a guy with a setup in his backyard, who is looking at the raw data and seeing something completely different than the press releases. He's looking at this thing and realizing that NASA is either fumbling the ball on a cosmic scale or they are hiding the ball. He downloads the raw Hubble files, the 272nd exposures, and suddenly the point of light NASA showed the public transforms. He sees a cone. He sees streaks. He sees structure. And you have to ask yourself, why is a guy in his backyard getting better resolution on the behavior of this object than the press releases from a billion-dollar agency? It comes down to how they took the picture. If you're trying to photograph a spinning top and you leave the shutter open too long, what do you get? You get a blur. You lose the detail. You lose the motion. You homogenize the data until it looks like exactly what you want it to look like. A boring, static dot. This is where the incompetence versus malice debate gets real interesting. Did they mess up the exposure settings on the most important object in the solar system, or did they choose settings that would obscure the mechanical nature of the object? Because if this thing is rotating, if it has tornado jets spinning in the back, like our guy claims, a long exposure just washes that out. It erases the evidence of controlled rotation. Our independent guy, he's looking at the metadata, he's looking at the exposure times, and he realizes that they approached this completely wrong. They treated it like a still portrait when they should have been shooting sports action, and he's about to break down exactly why their images look like a smudge and his look like a craft.
They should have taken smaller exposures. The previous NASA pictures were 40 seconds. We were able to actually get the spin. Now, since they're closer, they should have taken lesser exposures, like small time, and we would have got a fantastic view. But this is what we have to work with. But this picture is nowhere similar to the picture that was released. The picture was released more showing like a point, a small point, and then lesser coma there than the reality that you are looking at. I wanted to compare these pictures with the pictures that I was taking. So I'm showing you the image comparison. So this is the Hubble picture and I processed that. This is the picture that was released and this is the pictures that we are taking in the backyard. Still we are dominating in terms of the coma, the tail, everything. I did not see that stuff here for some reason. This was 240 seconds. This is 60 seconds. And on our time lapses, we are seeing the jet going back in this area, right? I must have shown that in the other videos. I can show you one more time. So if you see our time lapses, you should see the jet going back, like swirling into the wind kind of thing, right? That's the structure that I'm getting more and more familiar now, right? People are asking me to slow down some of these videos, like show it a bit slower. Put in timestamp when you are putting the comment that I know, like if I'm going too fast running these things, I can slow it down. Your feedback is very important.
So you sit there and you look at what this independent astrophotographer is showing us, and you have to ask yourself, at what point does cleaning the data become hiding the truth? Because that's the line we're dancing on right now. We're talking about the Hubble Space Telescope, man. This is supposed to be the eye of God, essentially. It's the tool that gives us the clearest look at the universe, and yet, when it comes to 3i, Atlas, we've got this guy proving that NASA is essentially applying a Photoshop blur filter to reality. They're using these point spread function models, which is just a fancy way of saying they're averaging out the weird stuff to make it look like a dot, and they're scrubbing away the very things that make this object impossible to ignore. And Ray brings up this point that just chills you to the bone. He's looking at the spectral analysis, he's looking at the behavior, and he says, Joe, this isn't a disintegration, this is a hatching. Just let that roll around in your brain for a second. A hatching. We've been told for months that this thing is falling apart, that it's just a dirty snowball breaking up because it got too close to the sun. But the data, the raw, unfiltered data that they're trying to smooth over, says the exact opposite. You look at the images from December 2nd, 2025, you see this symmetric glow. Nature doesn't do perfect symmetry like that, not when things are exploding. When a comet breaks up, it's chaos. It's debris everywhere. It's a mess. But this had smooth gradients. It had a sharp central point. It looked stable. It looked engineered. And then you see these faint finger-shaped jets. NASA says, oh, that's just sublimation from a rotating surface. Okay, sure. Ice turns to gas. We get it. But finger-shaped, oriented in a way that suggests stabilization, that doesn't sound like random outgassing to me. That sounds like thrusters. That sounds like attitude control. You have an object that isn't being shaped by the solar wind the way a comet should be. It's holding its own shape. It's maintaining a dust halo, but there's no ion tail getting blown back by the sun. It's defying the physics of a passive rock. And instead of saying, hey, that's weird, the official narrative is just blurring the image until it fits the textbook. Then you get the December 6th update. And this is where it gets really wild. Hubble sees a teardrop-shaped inner coma extending times the Sunday towards it. And they call it an anti-tail. I love how science comes up with these terms to explain things that shouldn't be happening. Anti-tail. It sounds like something out of a comic book. But think about the physics of that. The solar wind is this massive stream of charged particles blasting out from the Sunday. Everything, and I mean everything that melts off a comet should be blown times away, times from the Sunday. That's how comet tails work. That's day one stuff. But 3i, Atlas, it has a feature pointing directly into the wind. It's like watching a boat driving upriver while everyone tries to convince you it's just driftwood floating downstream. Driftwood doesn't wake And comets don't have teardrop structures pointing at the star they're orbiting unless they are generating force. Unless they are pushing back. And Ray's been saying this since September. Remember that? Late September 2025? The thing brightens six-fold in 48 hours. 6 times brighter. That's a massive energy release. And it turns that electric green. They told us it was the fracturing of the outer shell exposing carbon-rich ice. That's the safe answer. That's the answer that lets you sleep at night. But Ray looks at that and says, no, man, that was the ignition. That was the startup sequence. You strip away the camouflage, you crack the shell, and you fire up the core. And suddenly, you've got a tail oriented towards the sun, which, again, is inconsistent with cometary physics, and you've got this surge in brightness. It's propulsion. It's will. Even the JUICE probe saw it. November 2nd, the European Space Agency captures this image showing a double tail, a plasma tail going one way, a dust tail going another, a complex shedding of material. Scientists are sitting around debating if it's ice volcanoes. Ice volcanoes? We're inventing geological phenomena to explain why a rock is acting like a spaceship. At what point do we apply Occam's razor and admit that the simplest explanation for something acting like a machine is that it times a machine? But the tragedy here, and it really is a tragedy, is that we missed it. Or rather, we were made to miss it. By December 5th, this thing is 286 million kilometers away. It's traversing from Virgo into Leo, heading back out into the black. It's magnitude 12, fading out. We had this window, this tiny, precious window where the universe knocked on our door, and instead of answering it, we pulled the shades down and pretended nobody was home. We let the bureaucracy of science, the fear of the unknown, and the rigidity of the official story blind us. Think about the astrophotographer who downloaded those raw Hubble files. He sees the 270-second exposures. That's almost 5 minutes. You don't take a 5-minute exposure of a fast-moving object unless you want to blur the details. That's not incompetence. That's a strategy. They homogenize the data. They turned a cone shape with streaks and tornado jets, things that look like high-energy exhaust, into a fuzzy little blob so they could say, move along. Nothing to see here. It's gaslighting on a galactic scale. Ray calls it the single greatest fumble in human history. And I think he's right. Imagine if we had just been honest. Imagine if NASA had released the raw data immediately and said, we don't know what this is, but look at it go. Imagine the collective brain power of the human race turned toward this thing. But instead, we got the tiny dot narrative. We got the PSF models scrubbing out the anomalies. We got the anti-tail euphemisms. So now it's leaving. It's receding into deep space, just another faint object in the telescope, a mystery that we refuse to solve. And you have to wonder, what was it doing? Was it scanning us? Was it refueling? Or was it just passing through, indifferent to the monkeys on the blue marble who were too busy arguing about pixels to realize they were being visited? It's like we failed the IQ test. The universe threw us a curveball, something that defied the rules we wrote down in our little textbooks, and instead of rewriting the books, we tried to edit the reality. We tried to Photoshop the alien out of the picture. And now it's gone. It's heading out past Mars, past Jupiter, back into the void. And we're left here with our ice volcanoes and our anti-tails and our clean, scrubbed data, pretending we understand what just happened. But the guys like Ray, the guys in their backyards with the 14-inch telescopes who refuse to buy the narrative, they know. They saw the metallic signatures. They saw the green glow. They saw the machine wake up. And that's the haunting part, man. The truth was right there, screaming at us in electric green, pointing directly at the sun, pushing against the wind. We just didn't have the guts to look it in the eye. It makes you realize how fragile our grip on reality is. We think we know how the cosmos works. We think we have it all mapped out. But all it takes is one object, one visitor that doesn't play by our rules to expose how much we're just guessing. 3I, Atlas wasn't a comet. It was a mirror. And we didn't like what we saw, so we broke it. And now the pieces are drifting away into the dark, and we're stuck here, alone again, wondering what could have been. That's the real story. It's not about ice or dust. It's about the fact that we had a chance to see something real, something profound, and we blinked. We blinked, and it's gone.